Hey there! Do you ever wonder how farmers in ancient times used to predict weather? They didn't have access to advanced meteorological tools or fancy gadgets, but somehow they managed to forecast rainfall, storms, and sunny days with a fair amount of accuracy. Well, it turns out they were pretty keen observers of nature and had developed some pretty clever ways of predicting the weather based on things like animal behavior, plant growth, and even folklore. So if you are curious about what secrets these ancient farmers uncovered and how they used them to stay one step ahead of Mother Nature, keep watching. You won't want to miss this. Number 1. Animal behavior. Ancient farmers paid close attention to the behavior of animals to predict the weather because they noticed that animals have a natural sensitivity to changes in air pressure, temperature, and humidity, which are all factors that affect the weather. For example, cows tend to lie down when they sense that rain is on the way. This is because when it rains, the ground becomes wet and soggy, making it uncomfortable for them to stand. So if they see dark clouds gathering and feel a change in the air pressure, they'll lie down to make themselves more comfortable. Farmers would look to cows laying down in a pasture as a sign that rain was coming soon. Similarly, birds would fly low to the ground before a storm because they could sense the change in air pressure and use the ground as a reference point to navigate. If farmers saw birds flying low over a field, they would take it as a signal that a storm was on its way. And ants are known to build a larger mound before a rainstorm. As they move around rapidly, farmers can observe their behavior and determine if rain is approaching. One day, while walking through the field, a farmer noticed that the ants were building a larger mound than usual and scurrying around rapidly. He looked up and saw dark clouds gathering overhead. The farmer quickly headed back to the barn to get his tools ready for the rain. By paying attention to these signs, ancient farmers could accurately predict the weather and prepare accordingly. 2. Sky and cloud patterns. Ancient farmers also paid close attention to the patterns in the sky and clouds to predict the weather. They observed that the sky had different colors and shapes depending on the weather conditions, and that the type of clouds in the sky could indicate whether it would rain or snow. For example, they knew that a red sky in the morning meant that sailors should prepare for trouble because it indicated that a storm was brewing on the horizon. And when the sky was red at night, it meant that the storm had passed. In addition, they knew that the presence of certain types of clouds, such as cirrus clouds, could indicate that rain or snow was on the way. If farmers saw dark, towering cumulus clouds in the sky, they knew that a thunderstorm was possible. When large, flat clouds covered the sky, they knew that it would likely remain dry. But when wispy, high-altitude clouds called cirrus clouds appeared, they knew that rain or snow was on the way. By paying attention to these signs, ancient farmers could accurately predict the weather and plan their activities accordingly. Number 3. Wind direction. Farmers are known to pay attention to the direction of the wind to help them predict the weather. They understand that the wind can carry moisture, cold or hot air, and other weather-related conditions that can affect their crops and livestock. For example, if the wind is blowing from the east, it often brings with it moist air from the ocean, which can lead to rain or cloudy weather. On the other hand, if the wind is blowing from the west, it usually brings drier air, which can result in sunny skies. When farmers felt the wind shifting from the east to the west, they knew that a storm was on its way. One day, a farmer was standing on a hill in his field when he felt a sudden shift in the wind. It was blowing gently from the east, carrying with it the smell of rain. The farmer squinted his eyes and looked toward the sky and saw dark clouds gathering in the distance. He turned and walked back to the barn, knowing that a storm was on its way. Number 4. Barometric pressure. Ancient farmers also paid attention to barometric pressure to help them predict the weather. They knew that a change in pressure could indicate an upcoming storm. For example, a drop in pressure could mean that a storm was on its way, while a rise in pressure could indicate fair weather. Farmers would use a simple device called a barometer to measure the pressure of the air. One day, an old farmer was hanging out on his porch when he noticed that the water level in his barometer had dropped significantly. He looked up at the sky and saw that it was filled with dark, ominous clouds. The farmer knew that a storm was on its way and he spent the rest of the day preparing for it. By paying attention to these signs, ancient farmers could accurately predict the weather and prepare accordingly. Number 5. Moon phases and natural cycles. Ancient farmers were also keen observers of the moon phases and other natural cycles in the sky to predict the weather. They noticed that the weather could change during different times of the year and that the phases of the moon could indicate when there might be a change in the weather. For example, they knew that during the winter months, the weather was generally colder and drier, while in the spring and summer, it was warmer and wetter. They also knew that when the moon was full, the weather was more likely to be stormy. One night, a farmer was looking up at the full moon when he noticed that it was unusually bright and clear. He knew that this meant that the weather was likely to change soon. Sure enough, the next day, there was a thunderstorm. By paying attention to these signs, ancient farmers could accurately predict the weather and plan their activities accordingly. Number 6. Plant behavior. Plants are sensitive to changes in the environment, including temperature, humidity, and light levels, all of which are affected by the weather. For example, when the temperature drops, plants may wilt or shed their leaves, while higher levels of humidity can cause plants to grow more quickly. By paying attention to these signs, farmers could get a sense of what the weather was like in previous years. Farmers knew that the presence of dew on the grass meant that it was not going to rain. They also knew that if the leaves of a tree drooped, then it meant that rain was on the way. They also knew that if the flowers closed tightly or pine tree needles drooped, then rain was on the way. One day, a farmer was walking through his field when he noticed that there was no dew on the grass, even though it was early in the morning. He looked up at the sky and saw that it was clear and cloudless. The farmer smiled, knowing that there would be no rain today. 7. Folklore and sayings. In addition to observing the natural world around them, farmers also relied on folklore and sayings to help them predict the weather. These sayings had been passed down from generation to generation and were based on the experiences of those who came before. For example, farmers knew that if the rooster crows before dawn, it is a sign of rain. They also knew that if the moon is ringed, rain will come. Farmers took these sayings seriously because they had been proven to be true over time. They knew that if the rooster crowed before dawn, it was best to get ready for rain. If they heard the rooster crowing loudly and repeatedly, they knew that the storm was getting closer. Similarly, they knew that if the moon looked like a ring, it meant that rain was on the way. When they saw the moon in this shape, they would start to prepare for the storm by bringing in their crops or securing their animals. By paying attention to these signs, ancient farmers could accurately predict the weather and avoid any potential disasters. These are just a few examples of the many ways that ancient farmers used to predict the weather. Their keen observations of nature and reliance on traditional methods allowed them to forecast changes in the weather with a remarkable degree of accuracy. Even today, there is a lot we can learn from their wisdom and experience as we continue to seek out new ways to understand and predict the weather patterns in our own world. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos about farming and agriculture. Thank you for watching.